Hey guys, happy Wednesday and welcome back to finally another weekly coaching talk. Thank you guys for being patient with me while I had family in town and all that good stuff. So today I actually want to take the time to talk about the 80-20 rule and why perfect nutrition or perfect, track records in this area can really keep you stuck. I've talked about this a little bit in some of the other educations, but I really wanted to dive into what exactly this 80-20 rule is, what it means, because it gets thrown out a lot on social media by a lot of coaches and nobody ever really dives into what it is. And personally for me, I wasn't even sure for the longest time. Like, yeah, I understand if I have 100, of something and 80 of it has to be good and 20 of those has to be bad. I get it in theory, but I used to always wonder, what does that look like practically in real life? So, I just want to take a second to again address the fact that being perfect in our health and fitness is just not real and it's not relatable. Most people can eat perfect for a couple days or maybe even a week or two, but then there's always something that derails it, right? Like, we have holidays. We have Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. We have birthdays where, of course, we're going to have cake with our kids and we're going to hang out with our friends and maybe have a few drinks. And then we have anniversaries, and there's all kinds of things that come up in life that should be enjoyed, right? The only time I tell somebody, like, no, you need to stick to your plan is if they're prepping for a show, right? Like, that's a completely different exception, and that's not something that's sustainable for real life. And anybody that's done bodybuilding or any kind of show prep will tell you that outside of when they're in that prep, that's not how they live their life, okay? So just remember that perfection is not sustainable, which is why the 80-20 rule kind of came into existence and has been so popular, if you will, and great for, having a sustainable lifestyle that's healthy and helps you reach your goals, but it's also still fun and enjoyable, and you can do things with the people that you love. So what is the 80-20 rule? And yes, I have my handy dandy notes per always. The 80-20 rule is that you aim for about 80% of your food choices to support your goals, right? So things that are whole foods, that are lean, they're good fats, those kind of things. And then 20% of your foods are things that you simply enjoy. So pizza, cake, ice cream, the things that really fill your soul at the end of the day. This can also look like 80% of your numbers, right? A lot of times when I talk about macros, I'm a huge macros person. It's not something I think people need to do for forever, but I think it's something that everyone should do at one point or another. That is where, you hit 80% of your numbers and then 20% you miss by a certain percentage. Like, even that has to fall within a specific measure, right? So the reason that this works is that flexibility reduces guilt. Because what happens is a lot of us get into this negative feedback loop where, and I've seen this time and time again, and I've done this, where, right, say we have 3 really good days, we're hitting our numbers, and then someone brings in these amazing looking donuts from the new donut shop down the street into the office break room. And you go and have one, and they're to die for. And you're like, oh no, I missed breakfast, I forgot to prep it, and I don't have anything else to eat, I'm starving. You go and you have another. And now you've had 2 donuts and you start guilting yourself. You start beating yourself up. Well, I guess my whole day's ruined. I guess my whole day is ruined because I had 2 donuts and I didn't prep anything and this was my plan, but now I had these donuts and I don't want to do, and just forget it all. So then instead of going to the cafeteria and getting the grilled chicken wrap for lunch, you say, you know what, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna go down the street and I'm gonna pitch in to the pizza that everybody's going and getting. And now you've had 3 or 4 slices of pizza. So you have 2 donuts, 3 or 4 slices of pizza. And then you're like, well, now the day is really ruined. So instead of going home and cooking dinner, you're like, I'm just gonna pick up a Chick-fil-A on the way home. And you get an extra large fry because you're stressed. You get number 1 with cheese. You get Chick-fil-A sauce, and you get a regular Coke instead of a Diet Coke. And now your whole day is thrown. And you're like, wow, I ruined my whole day. And I'm tired and I don't feel very good, so you don't prep for tomorrow, and then tomorrow morning the same thing happens. And you feel guilty and you get into this feedback loop where you're like, forget it. Why even try? instead of adapting to this 80-20 rule and saying, okay, I forgot to prep breakfast, I had 2 donuts. That's gonna be my 20% today. Those calories, I'm still gonna count them, I'm gonna track them, but my 20% of my day is gonna come from these 2 donuts. Then the rest of the day, I'm gonna make good decisions because I know that I can see results with the 80-20 rule. So I'm gonna go to the cafeteria and get the grilled chicken wrap for lunch. Then I'm gonna go home and cook what's in my fridge that I originally planned to do. And now what you've done is you've stayed on track and you've removed the guilt that you would have put on yourself to get you into that negative feedback loop and that deep spiral, because it just becomes, well, I messed up, so why try? And then we feel depressed and we don't have energy, we don't feel good, and then we just keep losing that motivation and it just repeats and repeats and repeats, okay? The all or nothing rule really lends to guilt, and people who succeed long term don't do the all or nothing for their entire life. Like I said, like when you ask bodybuilders or competitors, they usually go into a prep season or a time of prep, and that is for a short period of time, like 6, 8, maybe 12 weeks, depending on what they're doing, right? It's not something they do for forever. So this is why it really, really works. Now, this is what I really want to jump into, and I have my numbers pulled up because I had to do some math that I really want to share with you, because this is the important part, and this is what matters, is there are different ways that you can look at the 80-20 rule, and you have to decide what's best for your life or what you're doing in that moment. So I want to give you some examples, and I am going to be looking down at my screen here so that I can read these numbers off to you and not get them wrong. So, 80-20 in real life. What can this look like? So first is daily. And I want to break down what this can look like for you daily, because for a lot of people, this is actually really helpful, especially if you're somebody like me that wants to have a sweet treat every day, okay? So let's just use an example. We'll use Bob. My kids call everything Bob, so we're gonna use Bob. Anyway, this is Bob, and he has a 2,000 calorie a diet day. Those are his calories right now for his weight loss goals is 2,000. That means if we follow the 80-20 rule, that's 1,600 calories of his daily intake need to come from foods that support his goals. Protein, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, those kinds of things. Then 20% of his calories, which would be 400 calories, get to come from foods that he simply enjoys. Ice cream, chips, pizza, a brownie, stuff like that. And that's something that he can track every single day, daily, as he's tracking his macros if he's already doing that. And he can get to the end of the day and say, I've hit my protein, right? We have to hit protein no matter what, right? So I've hit my protein. I have 400 calories to go. I now want to have these cookies. Can I have one cookie, half a cookie? Can I have a cookie and some milk? Can I have a bowl of cereal? Can I have this brownie that my mom made and sent us home with last week? Right? Like those are things he can sit down and work through and operate through to really stick to that 80-20 rule. That doesn't mean he has to do that every day. Maybe he doesn't want a sweet treat, so he's just gonna end his day eating all clean foods, right? But it gives him the flexibility to use those 400 calories on something that his heart is really gonna enjoy and is not going to send him into a binge, because he's been so perfect for so long that now when he sees the cake, instead of having a slice or half a slice, he eats half the cake. Right? It's really important. So that's the daily 80-20 rule, okay? Then we can step into weekly. Now, when it comes to weekly, we can break it down in a couple of different ways. So let's stick to the 2,000 calories a day for Bob. That's 1,400 calories a week. That means 2,800 flexible calories are what he has to work with for the entire week. So it could be 2 date nights plus 300 to 500 calories, right? It could be dessert a few nights. It could be brunch with friends. So it could be an entire meal, or it could be a couple snacks, but he's figuring it out for the entire week. He's thinking, I have 2,800 calories for the whole week that are flexible, and now I've got to figure out where I want to put them. Or, and this is how I like to do it when I think about weekly, is let's say he's having 3 days a meal, hitting his 2,000 calories a day. Think of that 17 out of those 21 meals need to support his goals, and 4 meals can be more flexible within a 200 to 500 calorie surplus. So if he every single day eats his meals and 17 of them, he hits his 2,000 calories, hits his protein, he's good to go, he can have 4 meals that fall him outside of those 2,000 calories for the day, right? Within that 200 to 500 calorie surplus. And this is where you can't just go off the rails and say, oh yeah, you can have 4 cheat meals in a week. Because the problem is, one cheat meal might only be 200 calories over what you're supposed to have for the day. Another meal might be 1,000 calories over. And if you have 4 meals that are 1,000 calories over, now we're 4,000 calories over for the week. And that can be a real problem and why people don't see results. So you still have to have borders and boundaries within the 80-20 rule and your cheats if you're going to go full on cheat meals. But you can sit here and say, okay, 17 of my meals, I need to hit all my macros. 4 of them, I don't need to worry about it, but I need to be conscious that I'm not going crazy over, which is why I always tell people, have your cheat meal, have your cheat day, but you still need to track what you're eating. Because if you're going more than 500 calories out of that surplus, now you're past your maintenance usually, because I never do more than a 500 calorie cut. Usually it's around a 200 to 300 calorie cut, right? So now you're just hitting your maintenance for those meals, for those days, and you'll be okay. We're not gonna add on. But if you start going past that 500 calorie surplus, that's when people can start adding weight back on, okay? So that's what weekly can look like. Next, I want to show monthly, because sometimes this is important when we have things like we know we're going to be traveling, right? We have a vacation plan, stuff like that. So let's say we have a 30-day month, okay? 24 of those days out of the month, you need to follow your routine and hit your numbers spot on. 6 days out of that month, you can have some extra flexibility. Again, this doesn't mean blowing the handles off for 6 days out of the month. This doesn't mean I'm eating in a 5,000, 10,000 calorie surplus for those 6 days, right? But I can have flexibility. So if I'm gonna go on vacation and I don't wanna track, I can say, I'm going to only have 2 drinks a day maximum. I'm gonna have protein the size of my hand at every single meal. And I'm going to limit it to these 6 days or these 5 days on vacation, right? And that doesn't mean, again, I don't want to sit here and say you have to worry if you can honestly say, I'm going on this vacation. We've been planning it for years. I don't want to track. I want to blow off the handles. That's perfectly fine. You just have to understand you might gain some weight or you might just stall your progress. There's nothing wrong with those decisions. It's just owning those decisions and being okay with the consequences that come from those decisions. But this gives you a little bit more of a guide to say, all right, 24 days, I need to hit my calories. I need to be around that range every day. I need to do as good as I can. 6 of those days, I can give myself some wiggle room. I can go out to eat with friends. I can go on a date with my spouse. I can celebrate birthdays, those kinds of things. So I really hope those numbers really help you. Because for me, that really put it into perspective. Because like I said, sometimes I hit everything is clean all day, everything's great. I eat clean foods, I don't worry about it. Some days, especially women, when it's that time of the month and it's in our cycle and we're like, I just need chocolate. You want to sit there and be like, oh, if I'm on a 2,000 calorie diet, I can spend 400 of these calories on the thing that's going to fill my soul and make me feel better. Okay, so that's really important. So just remember that one meal doesn't ruin your progress, okay? Don't let one choice become a weekend, then a week, then a month, and then we're into that really negative feedback loop where everything just fell off the rails, right? That's not what we're trying to do. That's not the point, all right? So remember, healthy is not about proving that we're disciplined. It's not about sitting there like, I'm the most disciplined and I do everything perfect, okay? It's about building habits that you can keep for the rest of your life. Really, if we really think about it, 80-20 can apply to a lot of things in our lives, and I want you to make sure that you apply it here and that you understand it. So this week, I just want you to ask yourself, where am I chasing perfection instead of consistency, right? That can be in our workouts. That can be even things outside of fitness. That can be with our spouses, our children, and how we talk to ourselves and the self-talk that comes about things when we have one bad day, right? I'm super guilty of that. If I'm hormonal, or I don't feel good, or I'm having a flare and I'm maybe not as nice or as patient as I want to be, then I'm like, oh, I'm the worst mom ever, and it spirals from there. Instead of being like, you know what, I've done really well this week and I had one bad day. I need to own those decisions. I need to apologize for my behavior and then move on. It allows us to give ourselves the grace to not spiral and to keep our heads up and keep moving in the right direction. Okay? So again, just ask yourself this week, where am I chasing perfection instead of consistency? And what can I do to balance it and bring it back into that 80-20 harmony, if you will? So as always, if you guys have any questions, you can send me a message about this. I would love to chat with you, but I hope you're having a good day, a good week, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.